Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ground Game Podcast. This is your co-host, Clay Hepler.
This is your other co-host, Justin Piche, and we're here to show you how to win the ground game.
What's going on, man?
Well, summer is here. My daughter is out of school, and it's chaos. Life is chaos right now. I'm obviously running this business, starting funds. My big house construction project is almost completed, which is exciting. I don't know when we're going to move in, but maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, we can start moving in. We're like really close. So it's kind of like since last August when we started construction, this has been this thing that takes up a bunch of mental space and thought of, affording it, paying for all the things. I have a bank loan, but obviously if anybody has ever done a house construction where they're taking construction draws, they will know that things don't always work perfectly. The bank will say, oh, we're only going to give you this much. And the contractor's like, yeah, but I paid about this much. They're not giving me this part. So I need this capital, or we're going to have to pause until we can get the bank. It's like there's so many moving pieces. So it's just been a lot of stress and thought of getting everything completed. But we're almost there. We're almost done. We have a beautiful home. And now we're at like the last stages of just all of the decisions that have to be made, all like the final touches, like your cabinet hardware and like what lights you're putting, where you're putting this decorative light and this sconce and this thing. And it's, oh my God, it's just a lot. My wife has taken on a whole bunch of like the thought. We have a designer that's helping and guiding, but in the end, we've got to make sure everything's done right, because going back to fix things in the future that we didn't quite like is going to be a whole lot more expensive than just knocking it out right now before we're moved in.
Yeah, the punch list items at the end. That's when someone starts to look at their hourly rate wage and say, what's my aspirational hourly rate? And I'll charge these guys that because they need some help here. Dude, that's, just remembering the flipping houses and that whole part of it's totally different. Home renovations are a personal thing, but I can really resonate with that. Same thing here. My wife was like sick this entire week. And so I onboarded 4 acquisition managers and
4 acquisition managers.
Yeah. And they crushed it, man. We got 4 deals locked up on Friday, or maybe 5, but, onboarding 4 acquisition managers while having to basically be a full-time dad, for 3 out of the 5 days this week. Woo, man, I was being flexible, right? But yeah, chaos is good, especially when you have these types of problems. They're really great problems to have. And I think it brings us to the topic today. I've been thinking about this a lot. And it first came to me, I would say probably last year, this topic. I was thinking about it, pondering it in my private time. And I felt that a lot of people would benefit from it, which is how to diversify, how to flow capital out of your land business into your life. A lot of times there's the hustle porn of, hey, I'm going to just keep scaling my business, compounding my business, and I'm never going to enjoy the fruits of my labor. And I talk to a lot of my private clients about like, hey, make sure that you're paying yourself a percentage of your profits every single month. Because if you're not, you're scaling an unhealthy business. Even people like Mark Zuckerberg, when he got his initial VC check, took some money off the table for Facebook. Don't quote me on that. That's what I've heard. But
how about this? I know the Coinbase CEO. I can't remember what his name. Brian
Armstrong.
Brian Armstrong. He did that when Coinbase IPO'd. He took a huge chunk of capital out of the business, and obviously enough to live for the rest of his life comfortably.
Yeah. So, in today's episode, Justin and I are going to go deep on how we allocate, protect, and grow our profits. We really want this to be a tactical framework for how we take money out of our business, to build our own personal wealth, to actually enjoy the money, that we have, without really slowing down growth. So anything to add here to frame this podcast, Justin?
Yeah, this can be like a sensitive topic for people, and uh, I think for, you have to understand maybe our positions in our businesses to understand why we take money out or how we allocate money. Um, and if it seems aspirational, that's okay, you know. And if it seems ridiculous to you, then that's okay. But we're going to kind of be a little bit more vulnerable maybe on this episode and dive into what matters to us and where we where we see our what we see the fruits of our business producing in our lives.
Hmm. That's amazing. Yeah, because the point of a business is not this like masochistic cycle of continuing to compound and playing the game more and more. It's really to build a life, right? Like a lot of people got into business to have time freedom. Like that's a huge one, right? I always hear that. Financial freedom, right? Being able to do what you want, when you want, how you want it. But if you don't strategically pull money off the table, you literally cannot do that. And so you build yourself a prison. And so there's a psychological component, which I'm sure we'll cover in a future episode. But there's also a financial component of building yourself a literal prison that you can't get out of, you can't scale out of, because you're not properly allocating your profits. So um, I first heard about Profit First, which is a book, I believe, by Mike Michalowicz, which is basically how you distribute profits to your from your business. There's like very purpose driven accounts. That's like I think there's a concept like zero. It's called like you need a budget or zero based budgeting or every dollar has a job or something like that. And it's about like allocating your profits in a percentage per month, no matter if you make 100K or 50K or whatever, um, to purposefully flow cash into your life, into different parts of your business for reinvestment. So you're not making decisions that are just based on, oh, we had a great month, let's increase marketing. It's like, hey, you have the cash flow and the bandwidth to do that. Um, have you ever read that book, or like
Yeah.
how what are your kind of thoughts around distributing profit?
Yeah, no, I have actually. I have it on my Kindle. I like pulled it up as you were talking right now. The tagline for Profit First right on the front is, oh man, it is transform your business from like a cash hungry monster to something else. It keeps going away every time I click on it, but it's a cash hungry monster to a money making machine. There you go.
Mhm.
You know, I read this early on in my land investing journey. I'm sure I heard it on a podcast or something like this several years ago, and I thought there was a lot of wisdom to it. The principle behind it, which we're obviously going to get into, is you pay yourself first. So you allocate some amount of the capital that you're bringing in, the revenue you're bringing in, to pay yourself. You allocate to taxes. You allocate to your OPEX account. In the kind of recommended way is to set up a series of bank accounts. So when revenue comes into your income account, you distribute it according to whatever percentages you should into the other accounts. And then while you're scaling, you're limited, or your constraint is the amount of money you've allocated towards that scaling function. That maybe your OPEX or capital improvements or whatever it is that you allocate that capital to. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, because it gets really stressful if you're dumping every spare penny back into your business, into more and more deals. And it's kind of an allure of starting a business like this, because you will scale faster, frankly, if you don't take any cream off the top or any money out of your business. But at what cost, right? At what cost will you scale faster? And I think that what Clay is maybe what you're getting at is things happen in business that are outside of your control. And if you don't create wealth for yourself outside of it and some catastrophe happens, you could lose it all. You could lose it all. And if you don't pay yourself an appropriate amount for the work that you're doing, you may be running a really unhealthy business that actually isn't making money. And I've heard this from a coaching client recently It's like, yeah, we made our net last year was about $200,000, but that's before I pay myself. I'm like, okay, well, that, yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
will say, I've had I had many challenges actually implementing profit first effectively while I was growing the business early on. And I've fallen away from actually doing. I mean, I do it in the sense that I pay myself a distribution from the business every month, but I have gone away from like separating the capital into bank accounts. At first, I was like, oh, money into this account, money into this account, money into this account. Watch it grow, watch it grow, watch it grow. And then some properties get delayed on sales, and we have a new acquisition coming up, and I've got 100 something grand chilling in my tax account, just saved there for taxes. And I'm like, well, I don't have the money in my capital account to purchase this property. I have it in my tax account though. So I'm just gonna take it out of the tax account and buy this property, and I'll pay it back when the next capital to kind of. And it just got so crazy, and I think when you're doing hundreds of deals in a year, it can get a little bit crazy maybe to keep up with it. That's not to say that it can't be done. It's just to say that I wasn't particularly good at it. I'm interested to hear how your experience with Profit First has gone.
Very similar. It's like a discipline that must be recommitted to every single day.
Yeah,
And the reason why I feel equipped to talk about this is because I've attempted to implement and it has not been successful.
yeah,
And so my thought was always, oh yeah, people talk about profit first, but that's not for me because I want to scale faster, right? Um, but you're scaling something that's super unhealthy, and you're not actually scaling a business. I had a conversation with another very accomplished land investor, and he was talking about his P&L versus a bunch of other investors' P&Ls, and he said he made less money but more profit because he was focused more on the profit versus the revenue. And so, revenue is a profit is sanity. Revenue is vanity. And this really puts that into perspective, and it creates a system, a lock-in effect that you are accountable to this, right? And another thing that really helped me, man, is like it created this perspective for me as the CEO of the business that I am the highest paid person. And what that means is I should be allocating my time better. I always talk about, our abilities as entrepreneurs is directly proportionate to our ability to allocate our time, our capital, and our people. And someone that might be less adept as an entrepreneur is not able to do that properly. But how you kind of get to that realization a lot of times is understanding that you are the business owner, you want to solve the biggest problems, and you should be paid to do that, right? But you need to have this forcing function that, like Justin said, you don't take out of the tax account as much as incredible as it is. It's it's forcing. It's like don't eat out of the cookie jar, right? And a lot of times it's hard. You're like, oh man, I could do that, and I've done that a million times. Well, I'll just pull out of my tax account and delay my taxes this year, and yeah, done it, right? But I think that it's kind of a really unhealthy way to. It's like running on caffeine. You're like, I'm just gonna like drink another, cup of coffee this afternoon and keep going, versus just like resting my body properly. Um, so that's what I thought of when you um, brought that up. And so every dollar that hits the business in this way is really assigned a specific role, right? The $1 is like, hey, OpEx, keep the machine running. The one is to build the next machine, right? Your wealth wheel. And then the other is like, you got to pay taxes, right? And an argument that I would that was very top of mind for me when I was thinking about implementing this is I'm like I'm different, right? I'm different because I can get a higher return in my business than I can get elsewhere. That's true. That's true. But that's also how entrepreneurs will work 20 years and have nothing to say for it because they think They know that they can get a higher return in their business, but even though they get a higher return, they don't diversify. No, I'm not saying you should diversify if you have a $500,000 gross profit a year business. But what I'm saying is, as you kind of scale, in order to diversify and protect yourself, protect your wealth, and protect the hard work that you've given every single day for years, it's good to diversify outside of and allocate profits outside of it. So I'd like to talk about how I actually think about this. So my money from deals flow into, let's say I make $200,000 in a month, right? Of the $200,000, about 50 to 60% is allocated to OPEX, um, depending on the month. The owner's pay, the distribution to me, is 15%. This is all within a C corp, right? I'm not a tax accountant. I'm not a LLC or a estate planning attorney or a corporate attorney. This is just how I structure it. The owner pay distribution goes into an S corp, which is distributed to me for marketing expenses, and I have 10% retained for taxes, and then I usually retain about 20% for reinvestment capital or retained earnings, right? And that's how I allocate my profits.
Mine is I'm looking at my accounts because I have all these accounts set up inside of my Chase account. And when I set it up, I put SLG OPEX as one account, 60%.
Okay.
SLG owner compensation, 10. SLG profit, 15. SLG tax, 15. That's what I had allocated when I started. I haven't used the profit or the tax account in so long. A terrible example for actually implementing profit first. Terrible.
Yeah, and there are different levels. Like if you look at profit first, um, there was a great article. I think it's on Relay Bank's website about like a different gross profit levels. Your owner's comp changes, your profit changes.
Yeah.
Look, profit first is a framework. It doesn't have to be a Bible.
Yeah.
And so you want to use it as it fits your lifestyle.
I found it I think the thing that I found the most challenging about implementing profit first was the way that I run the business, which is primarily purchasing property with my own capital. When you're deploying a bunch of capital into properties, it becomes really challenging. And you have a limited capital. Let's say you have $500,000 of capital deployed into inventory. Let's use a million because a million's a nice, easy, even number. Let's say you have $1 million of capital deployed into properties, and you're trying to scale. You're growing from 5 deals a month to 6 to 7 to 8. As you do that, your capital base that you need to hold that inventory has to grow relatively quickly, and the delay in time between that capital getting allocated into properties and that capital returning and the revenue coming on top of that into your business has made it really hard for me to sticking this amount of money in these accounts and being cool with it. Now that I have gone towards a fund where I've taken my capital outside of the business, put it into a fund, and that fund is now funding the deals, it actually, I think it makes sense to go back towards the profit first model for me because I'm no longer funding every deal out of my own capital, profits, revenue, tax account, everything. I'm now funding deals from capital that I have elsewhere that is coming into the business to fund deals. And then when I receive revenue or profit from those deals, it's really just profit. Like it's not the capital goes back to the fund, back to my capital pool outside of the business, and that revenue, that profit is in the business, and it can actually be allocated appropriately.
Yeah, it really depends on what you start with. For a lot of people, you don't have the luxury of starting with a lot of cash. And so you use a lot of funders to get off the ground and running. And it's also a business philosophy. I've always felt that it's better to use lenders, whether it's private JV funding, whatever, because of an opportunity cost calculation of my return on my ad spend is greater than 500%, 5x on in all my channels. And so if that's true, I'd rather allocate my capital towards that. Again, personal preference. You can see Justin and I are differing here in this way. There's no right way at all. It's just preferences. How I think about the diversification, kind of building wealth outside of your business, is three phrases. There's builder mode, 0 to 500K. There's optimizer, 500K to 1.5 a year in profit, right? And then there's allocator, right? So um, I'll take a stab at the first phase, Justin, and you can tackle the second, and we'll just keep going. So builder mode is where 99% of probably our listeners are, and land investors in general, right? The cash that you have, you want to reinvest to get to that critical point of, hey, I'm really starting to have a business that could make money. It's funny, I was talking to my acquisition managers that are coming in this week, and an average acquisition manager at my company can make anywhere between, 150K to 200K in their first year, right? If you're really crushing it, that's more than most land investors make without the risk, right? And so when you're in the builder mode, you want to take a modest owner's pay, right? And modest is defined by you, but whatever you really need in order to live. But for a lot of people that are getting into land, um, it's not their primary source of income, and so taking a little bit more of a modest pay allows you to scale at that level, right? It allows you to say, maybe you make 500K and you take 15% of that, or 20% at 100K, right? That first year, like you were talking about with one of your clients. And that allows you to, when I say modest, I'm talking about the actual, the total amount, not the percentage. But that allows you to start to build an emergency fund and start to pay yourself for the work that you put in. And most likely at that level, you don't have a ton of employees. So that's kind of builder mode, phase one.
Yeah. For me, in builder mode, I took out nothing. But I had that luxury because my wife worked. And so her salary could support our like basic living without having to take any cash out of the business. But it kind of is like an unrealistic start for most people, right? To be able to do something like that. Like most people have to live off of the work that they're doing. Um, my business probably could have supported a small owner's compensation, but you'd have to live pretty frugally. Like if your business is making sub 500K profit, you're probably not pulling out a ton to live off of. Let's just say. Phase two, call that optimizer mode. And this is where people start to feel like I have something that's working well. I have something that's working well. Talking about 500K, $1.5 to $1.5 million a year of profit in your business. And this is like, I feel like this phase is really this is where a lot of people decide I'm good here. I'm good
Mhm.
here. This is a comfortable life. I can pull out 10, 15, maybe even depending on how optimized your cost structure is, 20% of your profit as just straight owner's comp, and then decide at the end of the year to give yourself a good dividend and maybe up that if you have additional capital left over that you're not planning on reinvesting. Uh, and you have capital to start diversifying outside of purely your business if you so desire. And this is the place at which it makes a lot of sense for people to start adding other assets to build their net worth that are outside of their business. And for me, the biggest challenge of this phase was I didn't really pull assets out to reinvest. I just poured it all right back into the business. And I think that's a big, like Clay was talking about earlier, if I'm seeing 500% returns on my spend or something like that, am I really going to find a different asset class that's better? And the answer is probably not, but that's not the point of diversification. The point of diversification is to reduce your risk. And when you have all of your eggs in one basket, you whether you think so or not, you have a lot of risk. Um, what
Yes.
about you for this phase? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think we all think we're special until we realize we're not, right? Like, I think we should assume that we're not as smart as we think we are, and we should assume that black swan events happen, and we should assume that the universe hurls towards chaos and difficulty, and we should plan accordingly. Um, not That's not a prescription for how you should live your life, but I believe that um, our confidence in ourselves as entrepreneurs is higher than most people, right? And so taking being a little humble about maybe it is time to take some money out of the business, even though it pains me to do, and start to really pull out and maybe diversify into something else, is smart. Now, I'm I'm at the top end of this, the $1.5 million a year profit. That's where I start to think about it. 1.25. That's when I start to think about it. If I'm at 800K, I'm not there yet, right? I mean, I'm starting to pull cash out. I'm starting to think, hey, I should probably put some money into some savings accounts, right? And um, but when you get to the top of the, making more than a 1% or $1 million, you're like 0.01% of entrepreneurs. And growth, we're talking profit. We're not talking revenue, which is, there's a difference there,
Yeah, we're
but
talking net.
profit.
We're
Yeah.
talking net. We're talking after your OpEx, after you pay your employees, what's left?
Yeah. Yeah. Which that's a big business. That's a very big business. That's a, $2 million a year business, $3 million a year business, something like that. So, then at that point, then you get to allocator mode, which is over $1.5 million a year in profit, net profit. Transparently, I'm not here. I'm not here. Right. That's pretty significant, of net profit. I think at that point you got to be at 3.5, maybe 4 to hit that, depending on your structure of your business. If we're talking a standard flip model, and at that point, it's like it makes sense to start to think strategically about taxes. You're in the 0.001% of entrepreneurs, and it starts to think about taxes. This is kind of where we're going. My business is going, and where how else do I protect my assets? So that's the allocator mode, and that's kind of the investor mode.
Yeah. And that's, yeah. I think we're this year where we're knocking on the door right there. TBD by the end of the year if we actually get there or not, but we're on track. And things I'm thinking of are different now, right? I'm thinking like insurance, like life insurance is something I just ended up finally getting uh, in order to obviously protect my family in the event that something crazy happens. Um,
You get term or whole life?
I decided to get term. I decided to get term. So I got a pretty good sized policy that will wipe out any real estate debt and give my wife plenty of capital or cash left to take her time selling the assets in the business and be able to keep things running for a bit, to not have to stress.
You want to walk? Did you look at whole life?
I did. And frankly, I've actually read quite a few books on that subject, on whole life, on banking on yourself and all that kind of stuff. And I see a lot of value in it in specific use cases. I still always struggle with the first year's premium not going to any of your kind of cash value in your policy and really going like directly to the insurance company. It's just like it's tough. I see the value. I see the use case. It takes a commitment because it's something you need to do in perpetuity. And the benefits can be incredible, but it's hard to change plans once you commit to it. You know what I mean? It's not the most flexible thing.
So before I got into land for a really brief stint, I was licensed and I was talking about whole life insurance and banking on yourself. And I read all the books. I was literally licensed in it, in selling it. And I ended up stopping because I think that for 99.99% of people, it's 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 not a worthwhile investment. There's so much cash drag. Your net IRR over 30 years is 3 to 4%. you don't, you can have so much better compounding of capital using other vehicles. Now there is something called, and I'm getting over my skis here, um, uh, private placement life insurance. That's for incredibly high net worth individuals. That you basically can create your own fund, not like an index universal life or a universal life, but you can basically put assets in like your own personal real estate fund in the life insurance wrapper, and it's very high net worth individuals do it. And there is also what is called premium finance life insurance. And premium finance life insurance, depending on how wealthy you are and what your net worth is you can get a bank to finance a life insurance policy for you over a period of, for the payout period, maybe 5 years or 10 years. And you just pay insurance or you just pay the interest on the insurance. And what it allows you to do is not have that opportunity cost of putting your money into the whole life policy. You basically get it financed by a bank. Um, Again, over my skis here, but it's very, very interesting. It's called premium finance life insurance. This is the stuff that people don't talk to us about, guys. Um, and what the podcast of kind of what where our goal is to really help you scale your business, and this type of stuff is incredibly interesting, and it's another level of wealth. Now, she'd be concerned about premium finance life insurance if you're making 500K a year. Absolutely not. But as you start to get to that next level, there are opportunities to get all the benefits of that. You're just given a different level of opportunities, cost of capital, things like that. I remember I knew a guy that sold his roofing company for $290 million, right? And he probably walked away with, he still has equity ownership, maybe 150 million bucks in a cash.
Hey guys, this is Justin interrupting our podcast. As usual, to say thank you for listening. Clay and I are getting a little vulnerable, talking about kind of what our goals are and how we allocate capital from our business into our personal lives. How do we think about growing our wealth? How do we think about managing our capital? We're talking about profit first and a whole bunch of other things I think will be very valuable for you guys. And if you're getting value from this, leave us a comment below, rate, review, subscribe. We really appreciate it. It helps us. And a little shout out to Clay for putting this topic together. He put a lot of work into it, and I think it's a really good podcast. So now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
I'm going to talk a little bit about my wealth stack plan, what I plan on doing with the money that I make. And it's not betting it all on black. Right. So, out of the percentage of owners paying distributions, I do take a percentage of that and I put it into a savings account for targeting smaller multifamily or commercial self storage deals. So 5 to 10 unit apartment buildings and commercial self storage. A lot of that has to do with my background in real estate. I still own real estate, and I have a background in owning apartment buildings, and also the depreciation benefits. So, the goal is buy a value add property, stabilize it, refinance it in 24 to 36 months, and pull my cash out that I originally have in, get all the depreciation benefits. And that's kind of the path that I'm taking this year. At least I'm starting to stack cash for that this year. Um, last year one, two, I wasn't really in that position. But I'm starting to be in a little bit more of that position. And I like the real estate asset class. I'm kind of bullish on real estate long term, specifically affordable housing and some commercial asset classes. And so, not an asset class that I'm really interested in, and just don't have the time to get into it is residential assisted living facilities. I think it's a really interesting asset class. Returns are very high, but it is a similar, I would say, even more uh, arduous to maintain as Airbnbs, and I had a horrible experience with Airbnbs, as many of our listeners know. And so really interested in getting into that. I'm looking for an operator eventually to partner with, someone that can help operate the business. But that's probably sometime next year. Looking for to diversify a little bit into that, and then the next thing, of course, is staying in land, and this kind of brings it to you and me, working together on some more higher dollar value development, subdivide, rural subdivide development, entitlement deals. People bring us opportunities. 207-acre in Alabama that you and I are looking at right now. I just from a long time ago, we've been under contract for a long time. Closed on a 150-acre subdivide and a 20-acre subdivide. Some really really good opportunities, but these things were under man like 6 months type of deal. You know how that is.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
so that part is kind of a, co-GPing, not random loan placement, not random capital placement, but people really bringing us opportunities and coming alongside them, and looking at. I mean, you and I looked at that other deal in Tennessee, and so we're constantly looking. Um, you know, so what I don't do with my cash is buy crypto. What I don't do is put it in public equities. What I don't do is just kind of put it out there and not really consciously allocate it. I have experience in real estate. I like the tax benefits. Obviously, my core business is land, and so you and I both have extensive experience in developing smaller rural subdivides. And so this is not me diversifying into something that I have no experience of. I have a circle of competence. And so that's kind of how I approached it. So for listeners, um, not you can do whatever you want with your capital, but I really felt that this was the best way to allocate some funds that were starting to pile up to create a little bit of diversification, because I want to extract the wealth that I've created through my business and then allocate it to stuff that are not as high yielding, but maybe I would even say safer, more consistent, reliable than a business, right? Than being a dealer, than being a land dealer, right? Flipping land. And so that's how I think about distributing my cash. So yeah. How about you, man?
Yeah, I guess I generally pay myself between, call it 20 and $30,000 a month out of the business, and it's kind of like I really only pull money when I'm like, I need some cash in my account type of thing. I need to be more disciplined. My wife's actually leaving her job here in a month or so. She's finally moving to the stay-at-home mom. We've got 3 kids. We want more. It's kind of something we've been working towards as a family for the last 4 or 5 years since I started this business. Really, that's when that kind of dream really became more clear. Um, I mean, it's tough for a mom to have to leave her child and go to work. Like it's tough, emotionally, mentally, you know. Anyway, so we're about to accomplish that here in less than a month, which is really really exciting. And so I need to be more disciplined in actually pulling capital out and putting it into our personal accounts that we're just spending to live our life, spending on our personal mortgage, spending on groceries, spending on things for the kids, like that type of stuff. It's something I haven't really had to be super disciplined in because we had cash coming in from her job, and I would pull things out to fund things in addition to like our daily burn, like like the house addition, and we're buying our neighbor's lot as well, and pulling cash out of the business for that, or paying myself a lot of money to be able to purchase those things personally. Um, I am, at least net worth wise, heavily weighted towards land and real estate, obviously. I mean, I run a land development business. I have a lot of land, a lot of inventory right now. I also have obviously my house. I'm buying a lot not next to me. I have a 10-bedroom Airbnb in North Carolina that is a really nice home, that I bought back in COVID times, and it's performed really well. I've got a decent mortgage on it. Obviously, the larger the house, the bigger the rental checks, and the less kind of riffraff you have, because not just anybody's going to rent a house that largest, usually multi-generational family gatherings. And it's so expensive that usually it's higher quality tenants that rent that Airbnb. I do still have a stock portfolio that's mostly retirement accounts, which makes up maybe a little more than 10% of my net worth. And then I've got a big mortgage portfolio currently, about the similar in size, at least in principal value, to the stock portfolio. And then the rest is all land and cash. So right now, a lot of my excess cash is going directly towards paying for my home and the purchase of the neighboring lot, which is also going to essentially be my home, my yard, whenever I buy it. But the things that I'm working towards in my next several years, primarily larger scale developments, primarily infrastructure plays, infrastructure builds where I'm starting an SPV or a fund. We're so far the several that I'm working on or have done have been in the 1 to 3, 4-ish $1 million raise range. But my personal goal is just to get into larger and bigger deals like that. I'm starting a note fund, which is great because I'm looking for a place to sell my own personal notes into as well that provide liquidity. And then as I do some of these larger scale developments where like we just closed on one, me and a partner, Ben, closed on a property in Burnett, Texas, and we're bringing 40 lots to market. And they're kind of higher end lots. They'll probably sell in the 250 to 350 range. So I doubt we're going to have a ton of owner financing for those specifically. But when you're running a fund or an SPV for a deal and you have investors that are in that deal, the investors typically aren't going to want to just get payments for the next 10, 15 years as the fund entity takes these, mortgages these properties, or is the mortgagor on these properties and then takes in cash flow. You need a place to dispo those notes, both to pay off the bank note if it's early on in the development, and also to cash out your investors so they can get their capital back and invest in other investments. And so I see starting a note fund as a companion to development funds as a great liquidity pool for the fund who's selling the assets, the dealer that's selling each of those lots, and a place where you can give investors a really high quality 10 to 12% return on their cash for investing in notes. So that's kind of the next thing that I'm working on right now. And then I live in I don't know if you would call like kind of downtown Houston a high cost of living or a medium to high cost of living, but it's a relatively high cost of living area. And so a lot of my burn, at least on a month-to-month basis, just goes to the tax of living in a major city, like 2 miles from downtown. And then I do give, I give of my finances regularly and sacrificially to my church and to other causes. So that's a big place where capital goes as well. And then we like to go on vacations. So, I got to make sure I got the capital to go on vacations with the family. And one of the big, at least for my life, one of the big blessings of my wife being able to leave her job and me being able to support our family with this business is we're going to take my daughter and put her into a classical school, which it's called Second Baptist University Model. It'll be 2 days a week of class for her. So Mondays and Wednesdays. Tuesdays and Thursdays are like kind of homeschool days. My wife, as a partner teacher, parent teacher, whatever, will get through the course material for those days. But every weekend, we will essentially have 4-day weekends that we can utilize for weekend trips or travel or kind of whatever we want to do. And then it's a lot. One of the things that when I put my daughter into kindergarten in public school in Houston this year, that we knew would happen, but was kind of challenging, was it's very strict with how many days you can miss. Like there's a limit to it before you kind of get in trouble with the state of you're keeping your child out of school, both from a school funding perspective, and obviously they don't want children to be left behind and miss too many days of school. But it felt really restrictive to our lifestyle and how we desire to be able to live, which is to be able to travel when we desire to travel. So I'm pretty excited about next year when my daughter's in this new schooling program with my wife, and we're able to have a lot of flexibility. Now, I don't know if we're going to travel a lot because our community's here, our family's here, but having the opportunity to is very nice.
Right. And that's how we started the podcast, man. Like I was talking to my wife. Next year we are going to one of our good friends is getting married in Sicily. And then another one of our good friends is getting married in London. And so we said, you know, why don't we just stay in Europe for, the month between, right?
Yeah.
And or, the 5 weeks between and be able to travel around Italy, be in Italy and then go to London. Um, and that type of freedom, man, like hard fought freedom, right? It doesn't happen in a year. It doesn't
Yeah.
happen in 2 years. It's a long and hard fought and conscious freedom. But, you know, I think really the purpose of the podcast was to show the listeners that it's important to pay yourself. It's important to value your time. It's important to diversify and build wealth. It's important to live life on your terms because a lot of times I felt pressure when I was just starting out and I felt pressure to just put money back into the business. And this was during a time, as you know, I mean, we talked about my story a couple podcasts ago, you know, it, we were talking about ramen. We were talking about like, trying to pay for my wedding and really trying to get something off the ground. And I felt so much stress and pain to try to keep this thing going. Um, and after reflecting on all these moments, the things that you and I are doing, it's productive expenses.
Right.
It's life productive expensive. It's taking money out of the business so you can build wealth, so you can have that, man, that freedom. That's what we're here for, right? It's fun to stack chips, right? It's fun to stack chips. That's what we love to play the game, man. But like, it's also important along the way to live life on your terms. And your life on your terms could be stacking chips, right? It could be different than what we just talked about, right? And we're not here to tell you how to do that. We're here to say, hey, this is what's worked for us. This is how you actually build a profitable, scalable business and scale along the way while paying yourself so you can live the freedom, the time freedom, the financial freedom, that the reason why we started this podcast, right?
Right.
The reason why we do this, right? So I really hope that the listeners got benefit from this because, it's really up to them to take this and apply it to their own circumstances.
What mistakes would you say people should avoid? What are the mistakes? Like, don't do this. This is not how you diversify.
um, that's a great question. I would say there's a real core component of investor DNA that I was talking about my circle of competency in real estate. And um, I know real estate. I've invested in real estate. I've done a bunch of different asset classes in real estate. I know what I like. I know what I don't like. And there's an investor DNA. Just because we say that we're doing real estate or you have this thing in Airbnb and I had a horror experience with Airbnb and you had this one, doesn't mean you should do that. I think it's knowing maybe it's public equities for you. Maybe it's crypto. Maybe it's whatever. Know what your investor DNA is and follow that. And so I think people want to diversify based on what other people say, not on self direction, not on reflection, not on understanding who they are and what their investor DNA is. And that's a huge mistake, man, because all of a sudden a year later, you look and you say, oh man, I made some huge mistakes and really hurt my progress in building wealth.
Yeah. I mean, I've been guilty of that for sure. I've made a lot. I mean, I lost quite a bit of money in some stock short-term swing trading type stuff that I was doing, and market crash. Didn't have stop losses or discipline to pull out, and you know, lost money there. Lost money in crypto crashes, and I think through all of that, and not just a little bit of money, we're talking like a lot of money. And through all of that, I think the biggest lesson I learned is about understanding myself is I like to be in control of the asset that I'm investing in. And if not in control, have a trusted operator that I know that's in control. Because obviously I fund deals and I obviously I'm not in control of some of the deals that I fund, but that's okay because I know the person who is, and I know that they have good judgment. When I'm investing in when I was buying crypto and things like that, it's all speculative. There was no there was no basis behind the investment other than I want to invest in this because it's going up and it could go up more and there could be some significant utility in the future. And I'm not saying there isn't at all by any stretch. There probably is. It's just I have no control over it, and it's not backed by anything that I could potentially ever have any control over. Whereas when I invest in a land development play that I'm running, I've done the due diligence. I understand that there are forces, black swan events outside of my control that could significantly impact it, but I can mitigate risk inside of that. And regardless of what black swan event happens, the asset will not go to zero. I will not lose everything. If I buy a large development, costs $3 million, and I'm going to turn it into something that's worth $6 or $7 million, things go wrong. I don't know what could possibly happen. That asset that I bought is still worth something that's substantial. Maybe it's a 10, 20, 30% loss to my initial investment, but it's definitely not zero. And I just feel a lot more comfortable when it's not zero nowadays.
Yeah, I get it. I get that. How about you, man? What's one thing that you think people make mistakes of?
I one thing that I thought I would do when I started making more money was buy a nice car because I just always have loved vehicles and fast cars, and it's just not something that I really think about much anymore. I mean, I see a beautiful Porsche or whatever it might be, and I think, oh, that they're beautiful. They're really nice, but I don't have this like strong desire to buy one right now anymore. What I really think about is I'm like, man, I could put this money to work in another deal that could, help my family's future more. I think I weigh cost benefit a lot more against other opportunities to invest. And that's one of the things that I love about this business is that there's so many different opportunities to invest. There's so many different deals every day that we look at a new deal that could potentially be something great. We look at a lot that are not, right? But we find one or two that are potentially great. And I just would much prefer to invest in those than buy something like a car. Maybe it'll change. Maybe if I'm like sitting chilling there with like multiple millions of excess cash just chilling in the bank and it's all more rolling in, maybe I'll buy something that I really like.
Dude, I had a dream the other night about a 911.
I know. I saw one. I went to I went to Jerry Seinfeld show last night, his comedy show in Houston, with my
Okay.
wife and my mother-in-law. And it was funny. It was a good show, but there was a early 2000s Porsche Carrera that was just clean Carrera S, and it just looked beautiful. And I was like, that's not even that expensive of a car. I could totally buy that and have a fun little car to pop around in. But
Yeah, man, I've always wanted like a DB11, DB12 Aston Martin, you know? And I had a dream about a Porsche the other night. I was like, oh man, like when does it make sense for me to buy a Porsche? Like the DB12 looks really good. Um, but I'm with you, man. It's like, what's the point right now? Like,
yeah. I mean,
like,
I think having kids has really changed my perspective on what I spend money on, because there is nothing that I own in my entire life, any physical possession of any kind, that makes me happier than my children. Nothing. And there's nothing that could. I can't imagine any physical possession possibly making me any happier than being able to spend quality time with my kids. And my daughter, actually, we were having a discussion the other night, and I don't know how we even got to this. Oh, okay. So we're scooting around the neighborhood, and we live in a neighborhood called the Heights, which is really close to downtown Houston, and it's a beautiful neighborhood. And the lots are small. There's lots of houses, and there's lots of cars that go through there because there's a lot of it's high density for single family. It's like a high density kind of single family neighborhood. And we're scootering. She goes off the sidewalk into the street, and we're about to cross this main kind of street through our neighborhood. and I was probably 30 yards behind her, pushing the stroller, walking the dog, and she's on her scooter 30 yards ahead at the intersection. And to me, it looked like she was going to go into the intersection. And I see a truck like barreling through there. I mean, speed limit is 30. You know, most people go like 25. This truck's moving. And I just screamed. I was like, stop, like yelling, right? And of course, you know, she's like, oh, I wasn't going to go. A little kind of attitude. She's 6, so she got a little bit of an attitude, you
Yeah.
know. And I took her on the side. I'm talking to her like pretty sternly, and I'm just like, I don't know that. Like, you can't give me any inkling. And if I don't know that, that driver doesn't know that.
That's right.
And like, there's
That's right.
things that I see because I'm always looking out for your safety. Your safety is more important to me than almost anything else in this world that I am looking at constantly. And so when I give you an instruction, like, don't get off the sidewalk until I'm right there and I can inspect and make sure it's safe to cross, you have to obey that. She kind of had a bit of an attitude. And so I was like, all right, we're done walking. My wife continued the walk with my son and my other daughter and the dog and whatnot. And I walk my daughter back and we get to the house. She's going to get some discipline. And we're talking. And I'm telling her, I'm like, your safety is the most important thing to me. Like, you are my treasure. You are so important to me. I I would be broken forever if something were to happen to you. And then she asked me, would you would you die instead of me or something like that? That's what she asked me. Like, would you die instead of me? And I said, yes, 100%. I would step in front of anything for you. I would lay down my life for you and for mom and for anybody in my family. And you know, she's kind of like, her little brain is turning. She's like, oh,
Clicking,
you know,
clicking,
clicking. It's
clicking.
like, okay, that's why dad cares so much. And so, and those moments when, you know, things are clicking and she tells me how much she loves me, and yeah, she gets disciplined, but she understands the lesson. And like, those moments are way more important to me than
And a
any physical
$250,000 BB
yeah,
bill.
God, could yeah, yeah. And so I think there'd have to be a point where, anyway, I also think of the opportunity cost of what those dollars could do, like, for good in my church or in the world that aren't those things. Not to say I won't ever get something fun or, you know, a cool car, but it's just not a priority in my life right now at all.
I completely agree. And it, and another thing that I'm very aware of now is, like, with my son, is the cost of education,
Hmm.
and like very good education, and the type of experiences that I want to have. One of my really good friends in college, he grew up in a very wealthy family, much wealthier than mine. His father, when he was a teenager, would take him to his father was a very well-known lobbyist, very wealthy lobbyist, and he would take him to different countries every year. And so he could understand the different type of economies and politics, and just kind of having that time, maybe 2 weeks every year, to go to a different country. Sometimes it was, more of a third world country. Sometimes it was a, primary country, and getting to understand the culture. And that, like, hit me like a ton of bricks. And I said, I want to experience that with my children. I want my children to be able to have that sort of cultural experience. It creates depth,
Hmm.
and how you think and how you see the world. It gives you perspective, and you have this lattice work of understanding of different cultures and people, and it makes you empathize with people better and understand. And in the world that we live in now, having that skill to really understand people, right, where they're coming from, empathy, is huge. It's super important. And so
Yeah.
when I think about that, man, I think about I resonate with you so much, right? With my son, and um, in our future children, and that perspective. And another thing is, like security for my family. Like, do I want a vanity piece, or would I rather be the protector and provider for my family? It's not even a thing. And it's weird. After I had my kid, I don't like. I used to think, oh, my car is not whatever. Like, kind of. I didn't get like too wrapped up in that. Now I don't care at all. Like, I do not care, like, at all. And I don't, like, that's not lip service. Like, I truly feel that. Um, but I understand how other people perceive people as well. Like, I understand that you show up in a junker, people perceive you differently. It doesn't matter. Like, that's a
Yeah.
fact of human nature. But I think that we're that is a huge. I think that's a huge mistake. Buying the toys, right? So
I mean,
um,
there's a point, and let's be clear, like there's a point at which your disposable income is such that like if that's your desire and that's what you want to do it. And like I don't want any listener to
right,
think like we're
right.
talking bad about that being your desire because that's we're just saying that that's not our desire.
That's right.
And the mistake to be made would be going too big too soon. I think that's the key mistake would be going too big too soon. Spending money that on something that where when it could be much better used in your business and you don't have enough excess to justify that purchase, going too early into that dream that you want to buy and causing a liability to yourself and to your lifestyle that you just have to crush it in your business even harder to just to afford. That would be probably the mistake. But if you love cars and that's what you want to buy and you want a sick car and you have the excess cash for it, and your business is booming, like go for it. More power to you, whatever makes you happy.
What this reminds me of is um, the inner versus outer scorecard, and intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. And particularly in the context of business, I think it's important. If you're pulling money out of your business, there's a famous quote by Warren Buffett talking about inner and outer scorecards. He said, "Would you rather be the best lover in the world and be perceived as the worst, or the worst lover in the world and be perceived as the best?" And that is the inner and outer scorecard,
Ah.
right? And that's a whole, a Warren Buffett like pithy joke, right? But it's true. And so you do have an inner and outer scorecard, and that can help you avoid the mistakes of diversifying in that way. Yeah, I think that the the one thing that Justin and I admitted to, it's kind of like you admit that you shot the person, right? I shot him, to the judge, but not properly allocating your capital, your excess capital, to the accounts that they need to be in. Paying yourself OpEx. How many people do you know that they say, "Man, like, how I got blindsided. Like, I just ran out of cash." It's like, well, if you know how much you're allocating to your accounts every month, your reinvestment account, your taxes, your owner draw, your profit, your OpEx, it doesn't happen. Right? You can project out, and if you're pulling money you're robbing Peter to pay Paul in your business because you're taking from your taxes account and you're buying a piece of land, right? No shade on you, buddy. I get it. Um, but that's that is a recipe for disaster according to Profit First, right? According to how you create an operating system of properly funneling your cash, that's the recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think one of the it is again. I'll comment on this again. I think one of the greatest things that I've done in the last 12 months has been set up the with a partner the funding fund, if you will, that is now funding the deals going through my business. Because when I'm doing a deal with my own capital, let's say I use $100,000 of my own capital to purchase the deal, and then I sell that deal for, and I gross back 180, and I pay my capital back, so now I have that 100K, and then I have 80K of revenue that I then am going to use for OpEx and for profit and for everything. All right. I might not be able to increase my capital stack enough to purchase the next batch of inventory based on however much I'm scaling. But with the fund, the way it's set up is it's a kind of a recycling fund. So the capital that's inside of the fund, when the profit gets paid out, investors are not getting distributions quarterly. Their basis in the fund is growing. And they get a K1 that shows them that, and yeah, they got to pay taxes on that, and they can pull capital out if they desire, but they don't. It's not like the fund is automatically paying out dividends. Your basis in the fund keeps growing, and so all that capital, with the exception of a reserve in there, obviously for conservatism and being able to distribute capital when people need it, goes back into funding. And so the fund can actually grow pretty quickly in order to keep up with the capital demands of my business, and then also starting to fund other investors as well. And that's been great because now I don't have as much, like, yeah, it's efficient for the fund because they're not having to carry all of the operating costs. And then the negotiation between my business and the fund is just what do we need to pay to make sure that the business is making enough money to keep up with OpEx and getting more and more opportunities for the fund to fund.
Mhm. Amen, man. I love it. So what's next, right? For me, I have a goal of $50,000 in a month in passive income for my real estate assets. Um,
Do you have
that
any idea, just to expand on it, do you have any idea how would it be split between notes and real estate, or would it just be real
pure brick
estate
and
cash?
mortar.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm not counting my notes. I'm not counting my
got it.
notes. I'm talking just brick and mortar stuff. Um, again, uh, setting up a fund, um, for the opportunities that people bring us. Um, that's super exciting for me. Um, and and also really building out a trust vault whole entity strategy for tax optimization in my life, asset protection in my life, um, so that all the wealth that we're starting to build in my family is really protected for this generation and the next, right? And obviously for the game that we play, taxes are a lot. Taxes are important, right? And you're in Texas, right? You got a little bit of a saving there. I think it
On
Penn.
the income side, certainly not on the property tax side.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Um, but Pennsylvania, I mean, the Pennsylvania income tax is it's 3.7%. So it's not crazy, but it adds up. That type of stuff adds up. So that's the next steps for me. And keep having fun, man. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like I love this. I had this thought the other day, um, and it was when the struggle to get to um, $500,000 a year to $1 million a year business is very different after that. It's easier to make money. You have more opportunities. You have better people on your team, right? This is a people game. You have the ability to ascertain what is an opportunity, what's not an opportunity. Of course, there are more opportunities for shiny objects, right? Which we've talked about on the podcast,
Yeah.
but there's also more opportunities to make money. And so the game gets more exciting. It gets more exciting because you start to you build relationships with people that you start to have trust with, deal trust, and build business relationships. And so that's super exciting. So yeah, man, 1,000%. That's what's next for me.
Yeah. Man. For me, I can already touched on it, but note fund to have a place to give investors like a really solid return every quarter and a liquidity pool for notes originated from some of the larger developments that I'm working on, real estate and land development fund. Got a few larger projects right now that we need capital for, and SPVs are great, special purpose vehicles. You spin up for one deal, but you have to then go and raise for every single deal over and over again. I'd like to be at a point where I have a pool of trusted investors that want to continue to work with me. Actually, I went with a partner of mine and a friend was invited to play golf at a crazy amazing golf course last week. And another gentleman who has done over 2 billion in transactions as a fund manager, uh, real estate fund manager, and also an attorney who had like a huge team. It's just a really incredible person who I was just really grateful to meet and be able to talk to and get some wisdom from. He said to me, it's like, hey, your 20s are for learning. You learn, you try things, you start to get competent in whatever it is you're working. Your 30s are really when you get really good. Like that's when you hone your skills. That's when you hone your skills, and your 40s are where you start to make a lot of money if you're good at your job. He was, I'm 35, and he was saying, hey, right now, these next years, your job, if you're wanting to get into these larger scale real estate development funds, you're going to work on these larger deals. Your job is to find 10, 20, 30 core investors that you give great returns to, that believe in you, that trust you, that are going to be there for the next and the bigger deals. That's your job. You need to cultivate those relationships. You need to get people that are rooting for you, that trust you, trust your judgment, and want to place money with the opportunities that you bring. And if you can do that, you will crush it. You will crush it. This assumes you have good judgment. It assumes you can manage risks appropriately. It assumes you can provide good returns. He's like, and the other thing he told me, which I thought was really interesting, he's like, look, nobody cares. None of the investors that you're going to have investing in these deals, they don't really care that much if one of their investments loses money. They know that's going to happen. That's what happens. You do 50 deals, you're going to have a loser. You're not going to win every single time. You can't. There are both events out of your control, and there's misses, and it just happens. It's part of the game. But what your investors need to know is that you have good judgment, that you're going to make the right decision given the circumstances that everything is in, and that you're communicating very clearly so that they see that you care about their money. You care about their investment. You care about getting the most and making sure things work out as well as they can given the circumstances. You see the project through regardless of what happens. And if you do those things, you will have a stellar reputation and you will have people coming back for the next one. I thought it was great. Just really, really, really great advice. So I've taken it to heart. I'm going to take it to heart as I continue to grow and scale things. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what's next for me too, is just building up a loyal base of investors that I can give great returns to and that believe in me. So yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. All right, man. Well, the listeners notice at this point, the ask is, I hope you guys got a lot of benefit from this podcast. Gentleman's agreement is, if you like it, rate, review, subscribe, leave us a review. Let us know what you specifically liked about it. I say this every week, less than 10% of our listeners actually rate, review, and subscribe, and it helps us grow. We want to be known in the space as providing the most amount of value for how to scale and develop in the land business. Those two things are who we are and what we do: how to scale your business and how to develop rural recreational deals, entitlement deals. And so if you're getting benefit from that, guys, leave a rate, review, and subscribe, and leave a little comment down below. And until next week, we'll see you later.